The following contains spoilers for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. You have been warned. Greetings, fellow mortals. There's a difference in escalation between Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad that I find fascinating, at least when it comes to morality. Walter White's journey started out with him cooking crystal meth and killing drug dealers. He went from having the most mundane life possible to the deep end of the criminal world within a single episode. In comparison, the escalation of Mike and Saul's journey happened at a much slower pace. Part of me finds this odd. After all, Jimmy had been a con artist earlier in his life, and Mike had been a crooked cop. Neither of them started out as the most moral people at the beginning of Better Call Saul. Their descent into the criminal underworld proved to be a lot slower than Walter's. In the first season of Breaking Bad, Heisenberg shattered so many laws that we can barely count them all. He also dropped down the morality meter so fast that we got whiplash. In comparison, Mike and Jimmy remained relatively moral in the first season of Better Call Saul. Not to say that everything that they did was good, far from it, but compared to cooking meth, murdering drug dealers, and working with Tuco, they're in a far better position on the moral scale compared to Walter. There's a reason that crimes are treated differently under the law, and the morality of Better Call Saul shows us how it views the level of crimes, mostly if the crimes end up hurting people. Jimmy's scams in the first season come off as actually cute and relatively harmless. In fact, they benefit everyone involved, at least when Tuco doesn't break people's limbs, but that scam wasn't supposed to involve him. Take something like the billboard trick. While I would guess that there were illegal actions in there, Jimmy didn't actually hurt anyone. All he wanted was some good publicity. The man that he hired to be saved got paid. Even his clients benefited because they got an amazing lawyer out of that scam. I don't know about you, but I would love to have season 1 Jimmy on my side as my lawyer. So the scam probably wasn't anything the audience thought twice about. I mean, Jimmy went on to help elderly people afterwards. He did the right thing with the embezzled money. While not perfectly moral, it's shown to us that he's trying to be a good man. The same thing could be said for Mike. All he wants for the most part is to be left alone and to care for his family. Now, he did murder police officers in revenge for his son, but it's his son and they were crooked cops who were probably going to kill him first. Well, to be fair, Mike did play those cops a bit, but he plays everyone. Not to mention that his involvement with Jimmy tended to be to protect his family and to do the right thing. Even his work as a bodyguard for Wormold comes off as mundane, at least in comparison to Walter's first season. Mike puts it best: when you decide to break the law, you're a criminal. You just have to decide what type of criminal that you are. And those words do ring a little hollow later in the show and in Breaking Bad, but I think we can all relate to his words in some way. I'm sure that we've all broken the law to some degree, at least when it comes to traffic. We've all gone over the speed limits, we've all made illegal turns, we all had our seatbelts off when we pulled out of a parking lot. Now, calling people who do such things criminals does sound kind of harsh. In strict definition terms, though, it is accurate. Of course, the law doesn't treat such issues as harshly as the more serious crimes. There's a reason that they pass out tickets and fines instead of taking you straight to jail.
You make an appointment with the dentist and you don't show up, believe it or not, jail, right away. We have the best patients in the world because of jail.
The government would toss us in prison for not paying those fines, but that involves money. God knows that if there's one thing that the government takes seriously, it's getting their money. But that's not the point of this video. The point is to examine the line between legality and morality. The law is supposed to look at situations as coldly as possible. Impartial juries are meant to decide guilt. Precedents and thick tomes help decide sentencing. Now, it doesn't always work that way. I'm not arguing that. I'm talking about ideals. And ideally, the law is in fact blind to anything but the letters written down into code. Morality and ethics work in different ways. They can appear biased and based on the people involved. Let's say that you hear a story about a man who went and shot another man. It was premeditated murder. It's on videotape, and there is no case for self-defense. Now, let's go into the details of two different scenarios for this murder. One, the murderer hated the other man for getting a job that he wanted. Two, the murderer hated the other man because the other man was a rapist. Now, you probably have two different gut reactions to these scenarios. I'm not saying that you're wrong about how you feel. That's how ethics works. That's how our internal code works. That's why so many people can relate to Mike and Nacho. We can respect and like a person who has a strict code of honor. It's rare that I ever have my gut twist from watching people like Mike or Nacho. They want to keep innocents out of their line of work. Period. Their sense of honor makes us relate to them, and we have a lot less pity for the people that they hurt and kill, because those people decided to be part of the game. Of course, the law doesn't and shouldn't care about those codes of honor. All the legal system should see are the illegal acts. It doesn't matter what the motives or mindsets are. This is the ideal that Nacho's father prefers. Trust the legal system. To Manuel Varga, things will work out if you follow the law. It's why he's one of the most moral characters in either show. Unfortunately, that's not always how it works. We all know that the legal system isn't perfect. It fails, but it's the best thing that we've got right now. We need its strict code because Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul shows the ethical degradation of disregarding the legal system. Each step deeper into the abyss gets easier. We see the change happening before our eyes, but our morality tries to justify Jimmy and Mike's actions because we understand their personalities and their motivations. Eventually, they stop being the person that we were supporting. I think that we can pinpoint the spots in a lot of the characters' journeys where they stepped over the line. When Walter watched Jane die, when Mike killed Warner, and, in my opinion, when Jimmy started scamming Irene. Now, the odd thing about Jimmy's situation is that it wasn't a single act. This was Jimmy making repeated choices to hurt an old woman. This wasn't Jimmy scamming egotistical jerks. This wasn't him trying to get publicity. This wasn't him trying to help someone. This wasn't even him fighting against Chuck. Jimmy wanted the Sandpiper money, and he lashed out at Irene Landry to do it. He isolated her from her friends. He made her the villain in her peers' eyes. He made her cry in despair at being alone in the world. Jimmy punished an old woman who had already been abused by the people that were supposed to take care of her. I can't even begin to explain to you the gut-wrenching feelings that I had while watching Jimmy manipulate the elderly. Jimmy became Sandpiper at that time. It was the first moment in the entire show that I looked at him in disgust. While he did pull out of the scam at the end and fix what he'd done, Jimmy showed just how monstrous that he could be. I wouldn't say that I stopped liking him after that, but it was the first time that I couldn't justify what Jimmy was doing. And the worst part is it had nothing to do with breaking the law. Now, I don't know for sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think Jimmy broke too many laws while he was trying to isolate Irene. Okay, he did take a peek at her paperwork, but during the process of hurting Irene's reputation, I don't think I saw anything that the legal system could actually do to stop him. Prosecutors could try to get at Jimmy, but it would be a flimsy case at best. And perhaps that's the worst part. It was a completely immoral act that harmed an innocent and good person, and it wasn't illegal. Like I said, I don't know all of New Mexico's laws, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. It brought out such disgust in me that I still remember it to this day, and I don't know what anyone could do about it. This type of thing does happen, and there's nothing that we can do. I think that's one of the most amazing aspects of Better Call Saul. It perfectly walks the line of criticizing the legal system and chastising people for thinking that they're better than it. The show demonstrates how terrible it was that Saul could get a plea bargain for 7 years. At the same time, it wags its finger at us for supporting and liking thieves, drug dealers, and murderers. It shows us all that our morality is biased and untrustworthy at times. The more we know about the criminals as people, the more we want them to get away with what they've done. Empathy shouldn't always be used while judging those who commit crimes. After all, we watched the journeys of Jimmy and Mike. We saw them step into the criminal underworld. We saw them become worse than how they were before. In many ways, we supported that process because their paths were a lot slower than Walter's. He spiraled from an everyman to an unforgivable monster. In contrast, Mike and Jimmy moved from being flawed men to some of the worst criminals out there. Their journeys were slower, more gradual, and less extreme, and they still held onto parts of themselves that we latched onto, whether it be a code of honor or a level of charisma that just can't be denied. We liked them still, no matter what they did. Better Call Saul's deconstruction of morality and law is one of the things that makes it one of the best shows ever made, because despite the legal system's flaws, the show never acted like it knew any better. The writers didn't act like they were all-knowing. They understood the downfalls of using your own morality to judge crimes, but they still did show how flawed the criminal justice system can be. All the while, it didn't come off as preachy. That's like walking over a thin wire that's positioned over a deep chasm, and Better Call Saul was doing backflips over it. But what do you think? What's your views on the intersection between morality and legality? How do you think Better Call Saul handled it? Do you think that I missed anything? Let me know in the comment section below. And thank you so much for watching. If you like my takes on storytelling, please remember that I'll be self-publishing my novel, Dance of Frozen Death, at the start of 2023. I hope that you will check it out. I appreciate you. Do not despair.